Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this third assembly of our Prime project and our first live experience of being together. We're just thrilled. My name is Gretchen Amundsen, and I will be chairing this assembly as I have done for the past two assemblies. And because we know that some of you here today are new members of the assembly, I thought I would give you a little information to make you feel more comfortable about what our objectives are and how we are going to work. So the objective of the project is to look at how we can develop higher music education environments which are more safe and more supportive for all of us, that is for teachers, students, and staff. And I would just like to add, for those of you who are new, that in this assembly, we have a mixture of teachers, students, and staff, and this is one of the great treasures of the experience and of the sharing that you will experience in the next 2 days. So that is our objective, is to look at ways of improving the higher music education institutional environment by suggesting ways to deal with power relations in our institutions. And more specifically, you will be asked to come up with statements which are in the form of recommendations, which will then be voted on by you to choose which ones you feel are most important. And these will then be shared with the entire European Association of Conservatoires community. So you represent 8 geographically spread out European institutions, and you are speaking to the entire community in Europe of higher music education. So this is a really vital thing that you are engaged in. How do we do this? How do we work? This is one of the really original aspects of the project. We use a form of deliberative democracy. And the way that deliberative democracy works is that you come together, a group of individuals from different backgrounds, and you are provided with information, with expert information. And you will see that later in the morning we will have a presentation by our expert. And you have been also provided through the brief with additional resources, which I hope you've taken the time to look at. And this information serves as the basis for our discussions and our exercises, which then lead in turn to the recommendations you will make. I would say that the experience has been a very transformative one for all of those who have participated thus far. And we see many of you have become agents of change in your institution, and you are moving things forward in astonishing ways that are all appropriate for where you sit. And this is another one of the important aspects of this project, is that we come into this project with a lot of stereotypes about each other. And we think maybe if we come from one part of Europe, that maybe things are better in another part of Europe, and maybe it's even paradise in the north, because the north is always much better. But we find that in fact, these questions exist everywhere. And I think that's another one of the great strengths of this project, is to bring out how important each of these strands are in each of our institutions. So you're going to get together, you're going to share information, you're going to have a toolbox that you share, a toolbox of shared language, and you will make your recommendations. And I want you to know that there is a wonderful website on the AC. Now I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I'm supposed to do something. There we go. And for those of you who want to read more, even though you're already participating, this website is very complete. I would like to add that in addition to those of you who are sitting here, we have some participants who are joining us by Zoom, and we will have breakout sessions with our Zoom participants. So I want to say a special welcome to the Zoom participants at this point. And then most importantly, I would like to introduce the Assembly Working Group, which has come up with the exciting program you will experience in the next 2 days. And I will start with Esther, the chair, and I will ask each of the Assembly Working Groups to say their name and their country and share their musical activity.
Well, hi, everyone. It looks on, it has a green button. I like the green light here. Ah, it's working. Oh, great. I can hear myself. Awesome. So good morning, everyone. My name is Esther. I'm originally from the Netherlands, now currently residing in Berlin. My instrument of choice, well, or my background is I'm a wonderful, wonderful project manager. And I also am an amateur musician, so I play the flute and the piano. Thanks.
Hello, good morning. My name is Jesus Echeverria, and I'm from Spain. I work here in Musikhochschulen. And well, I don't play an instrument. I'm a conductor, I'm a teacher, and I'm a composer. So I do all these things. So welcome to San Sebastian, everyone.
Good morning, I'm Constanze, I'm from Austria, and my instrument is talking about music because I'm a music mediator and a professor in Graz University, and I play piano and the flute, but you don't want to listen to that.
Hello everyone, my name is Lasse, I'm from Sweden. My real name is Lars, but if you can tell, I will listen if you said Lasse or Lars. I work in Malmö and I play bassoon.
Hello everyone, my name is Karolina, I'm from Krakow, Poland, and I don't know who am I actually, because I finished high school as the violinist and then I studied music education and then music theory, and then I ended up at international relations. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Megan. My journey is straightforward. I'm an opera singer and I'm from Ireland.
Good morning everyone, my name is Anna and I'm coming from Academy of Music in Zagreb from Music Education Department. My instrument was piano, but you also don't want to hear it, the same as Constanza. And I worked a lot with vocal ensembles, both in traditional and classical music repertoire. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to say a word about myself, I consider myself to be a retired organist, and I worked for a very, very long time at the Paris Conservatoire, and my role here as chair is to be a neutral person who comes. I'm not involved in any of the institutions that are part of this project, and my role is to make sure that this is a respectful process where everybody has a voice, where no one is taking over, where there's no hidden agenda, and where we go on the journey that we're being asked to go on. So without further ado, I will ask Constanza to get us started. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. As you can imagine, this is not the kind of seating which really brings us in the process of working together. So please stand up and please try to do a circle in an egg shape. I fear we will find. That's great. So we will have participants on screen, so let's try to have them in our circle as well. So I think you have to step a bit behind. Yes, wonderful. You're great. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we are now starting with a game, and you will see it will lead us to something else, but we started as a game. Everybody who has birthday in June, please step forward. Everybody who has relatives abroad, please step forward. Everybody who loves coffee, please step forward. Everybody who prefers beer over wine, please step forward. Okay. And everybody who didn't step forward, please come forward now. Wonderful. Good morning, everybody. It's just about how diverse and different we are to each other and how similar we are anyway. So, good morning. And now I hand over to, no, I don't. No. Okay. We see now a video, so I'm so sorry. So please take a seat again, and perhaps we can remain in a kind of circle. So try the best not to have 2 rows, but only 1, if possible. But it's not possible, no? Wonderful. Annette, if you could go, so that we really have a circle, so we don't need, it was only for the entry. Perfect. Wenn du vielleicht auch da noch anschließen könntest. Super. Wonderful, thank you very much. As you all have seen, we have our working places then over here. It's just now for seeing the video. Thank you.
Well, we are going to watch a short film that it was made in collaboration with the Johannes Kepler University and the University of Art and Design Linz. The aim of the movie you are going to watch is to draw attention to discrimination in the working sector without resorting to explanatory structures. The way the film is made puts scientific content on screen and make it more accessible to the audience. Enjoy it.
Your Majesty, how can I enter your kingdom?
With the color white.
Your Majesty, how can I enter your kingdom?
If you are a man.
Your Majesty, how can I enter your kingdom?
If you are married.
Your Majesty, how can I enter your kingdom?
If you are Christian.
Your Majesty, how can I enter your kingdom?
With a local passport.
Your Majesty,
How can I enter your kingdom?
If your name sounds like it's from here.
Your Majesty, how can I enter your kingdom?
If you are heterosexual.
Your Majesty, how can I enter your kingdom?
If you don't plan on getting pregnant in the near future.
Your Majesty, how can I enter your kingdom?
If you don't wear a headscarf.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
It's not that important. Am I pronouncing your name right? Olabode Adebayo?
Yes, that's right.
Great. That could have been really embarrassing.
Wonderful. I'm happy that you care about such things.
Your English is very good. And your mother tongue is Hindi?
Well, both. I speak Hindi with my mother.
So you take the term mother tongue very literally. And one thing that I just thought of, do you plan on having children anytime soon?
I would rather not answer that.
No, please don't get me wrong. It is very important to us to help support young mothers and families. There's a kindergarten right around the corner, for example.
Well, if I'm being perfectly honest, I could imagine having children sometime in the near future.
And what would you imagine to be your salary?
Good question. 3,000 before taxes would be reasonable, I should think.
Well, that is a bit more than we imagined, but I'm sure we can figure something out. And are you married?
Not yet, but in 3 months.
Oh, congratulations. And what does your future husband do for a living?
My wife-to-be works as a doctor.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. When was that legalized? 2016, right?
Actually, in late 2018. I have to say it did take a lot out of me, if I'm being honest.
But in the end, love conquers all. So you are politically active. And besides that, what are your hobbies?
I like to cook and I make music with my friends.
Yes, I can imagine.
In a string quartet.
Oh, right. That's lovely. Would you be willing to be on the company photograph? You know, we're trying to show diversity in our firm.
Sure.
Okay. Could you imagine working in a different department as well?
Well, I guess I could. What exactly would that be?
We'd need a secretary for half the day, only if you're interested, of course.
I've never worked as a secretary before, and I did apply for this position.
Yes, of course, I understand. In your case, I would have thought of a leading position in our team anyway.
Well, that would be great.
Wonderful. I just have one last question. Where does that name actually come from?
From Nigeria.
And how long have you been here?
So you just assume that I'm from Nigeria?
I just thought. All right. I see that you're also a feminist activist. How does that go together with wearing a headscarf? That just doesn't fit to my mind, if I can be so honest.
What kind of a question is that? I decided for myself to wear a hijab, and feminism also stands for autonomy over my own body.
But you could take it off at work, right?
Do you have any other questions?
each of you in 7 different groups. And we are going to discuss this video and the content, okay? So randomly, I will say for 3 groups of 5 people and 4 groups of 4. And each group will be moderated by one of us, okay? So,
words about their conversation, and I'm going to start with Constanza.
So I think it was hard at any table, as I can see, as you don't want to stop talking. It's the same at our table. We just started and now we have to stop again. So this will happen the whole 2 days. But I hope we will address as many topics as we really can work on. So we started only to speak about the diverse communities in our institutions. We had institutions from Ireland, from Kharkiv, and from Graz at our table, and we all have diverse communities, but we all see that we don't have diverse leaders of departments or in the rectorate, in the Senate. And we talked about why this is the case. And we think the main topic is language, because we have very difficult things to read and to speak about. People who are not German speaking, for instance, in our Graz University, or English speaking in Dublin, or Ukraine speaking in Kharkiv, they don't feel fit enough to do all this work. So language is really a topic, but we think we could encourage, and I think we all agreed that if we would have language courses at our universities and really do some time on language, we could change this. What has to change, what we also saw is that the staff itself, the people who are at the positions of leadership, they are gatekeepers and they don't let other people in as easily, because that's what they are doing. That's their city and their administration office, and so there is some hidden agenda, perhaps. Then we thought, then we talked a lot about money, because students have to work so much. That was the impression of almost everybody at our table, that students should work less and should have more time to study. We talked about scholarships, about raising scholarships, about merit-based scholarships, which really go to the students in need and not to everybody who knows that there are scholarships. So it's a broad topic, and I stop here.
Thank you. So Carolina, who is on Zoom with our Zoom participants, I'm going to ask you to share your conversation.
Okay, so we briefly talked about the situation at our institutions. I had participants from Rome and from Dublin, and from the beginning it was 2 different institutions, because in Rome there is many diverse students and staff, and it's very, of course, Rome is Rome, right? So, as we know. So, on the other hand, in Dublin, there is no much diversity, and I see very common. I think it's very common to Krakow. I think it in Dublin represented mostly by Catholic society. The guys from Dublin correct me if I'm wrong, and mostly the society is not much diverse. And we also talked about there is actually no discrimination at the institutions, but in the communication of diversity, we would rather communicate internalization rather than private sphere that is other types of diversity, like gender or sexual orientation, or so social economical background, because we need to leave some private spheres to those who need that. And then and that was our conversation based.
Thank you. So Esther.
Thanks so much. In my group, we had people from Mannheim, Graz, Zagreb, and San Sebastian, and we talked about different ways of diversity. So the first thing that we talked about was international students mainly. So that when you look at the institution itself, that some of us have an international student body, and so it looks kind of diverse. But then if you zoom in into different departments, you can see certain trends. So for example, that in the teachers, there's more male teachers than female teachers, even though in some institutions there's more female students than there are male students. You can see that there's male overrepresentation in the jazz department, while there's a 50-50 balance in the business side. And in these four institutions, it was only in Mannheim where you could identify differently. So it could, in forms and etc., you could fill in something different than female or male. As you can hear, we talked a lot about gender, and that was because there's barely any socioeconomic background or migrant diversity, actually. So it's kind of hard to talk about that. And then in the way that it's communicated, I've written down some examples from Mannheim because we feel that there's some work on diversity done. There is pop academy talks, for example, on mental health and other things that have to do with diversity. There's a FLINTA group that was a new abbreviation for some of these, for some of the participants. FLINTA stands for female, lesbian, intersex, non-binary, trans and asexual. So that's a group for people that identify as such, and that exists since a year. Gender, I mean, well, gender was most of the things. For example, in Graz, it's mostly male-female still, kind of what when we talk about gender. And one, I think, overall thought was that sometimes we didn't really see systematic change. So while on an individual level there was respect and maybe there were some individual actions, there was no system like plan in order to increase diversity and how to communicate that. Thanks.
Thank you. Megan.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. So I had participants from Rome and Dublin. So there was a lot of similarities between both institutions. So both are not very diverse, and diversity is not communicated very well. We talked a little bit about funding. So there's not many scholarships or help. So that means people from lower class families are excluded and don't have the same opportunities as everyone else. We talked a little bit about dyslexia as well, that came up, and we found that teachers are not trained to help students with these issues. We found that staff in both institutions are not very diverse. However, for the students, it is a bit more diverse, but it comes from Erasmus students. So it's people coming from other countries into your country, and that's what creates the diversity. That's kind of it. They're the general points. So I will leave it at that and pass it on to Jesus. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a diverse table here. We had people from San Sebastian, from Zagreb, and from Mannheim. So that was diverse already. Diversity was on the table. And we saw it because the differences between all these institutions. We talk about money, obviously, because the fees in different institutions are so different. Like a huge amount of money in one place, free in another place. So some students have to work. And that makes teachers think that if they wouldn't work, they would get better with the instrument. We saw that diversity is not very common in some institutions, But in others, they have like lots of diversity, like Graz. They have many students from abroad, more than people from Austria. Also, we talk about world music department in Mannheim, which is a very good starting point for diversity to get involved in the institution. But it's getting worse. It started really high with high expectations, but it's not getting better. So they have to rethink about it. And last but most interesting, in some institutions, we don't have any communication at all about diversity or race, sexual orientation, social economic backgrounds. But in Mannheim, they have workshops to communicate diversity. They are aware of the different kinds of diversity, which is really, really good. Thank you. Anna?
Thank you. My table, I really notice big differences in diversity amongst institutions from San Sebastian, Malmö, and Zagreb. So I will just try to keep it short because we heard several stuff already from another tables. So in Malmö, there is definitely diversity between genres, so you can study classical, jazz, and world music, which is not the case in San Sebastian, where you can study only classical and jazz, and in Zagreb you can study only classical music, so this is already a big difference. In Malmö there are mainly students with parents with academic background. BA programs are in Swedish, and there is a free education but no scholarship, so foreign students pay or they come by Erasmus, and there is around 1/5 of students coming from abroad, if I understood correctly. Website is quite accessible to everyone. It's in English and in Swedish. And for example, they have descriptions under pictures, and their pictures really tell stories. They try to include people of different age, gender, cultures, and so on. So there is a process of doing that and making website accessible also for visual impaired people and so on. In San Sebastian, there are students mainly coming from middle and high class. They have predominantly male teachers and female maybe in administration staff, and there is a balance in leadership. I noticed the same thing in Zagreb, in this kind of balanced. Also in San Sebastian, students come mainly outside the Basque country, and but teaching is happening in Spanish. But on job market, if they want to stay here in Basque country, thank you, the main requirement is to speak Basque language. So that's imbalanced. Yeah, and students are coming mainly from privileged backgrounds because this is a private university with public funding. So they mainly don't work, which is not the case in other institutions. Also, website is in Spanish, Basque, English, and French, and diversity is not very much shown, as we notice in Malmö. In Zagreb, as I said, I mean, we have very few international students. We teach only in Croatian, so it's easier when someone comes from through Erasmus. Then it's easier when there is individual classes, so you can approach the students. But in group classes, there are no English classes. Students, I noticed both students from privileged backgrounds, but also students who are coming from different regions from Croatia with no privileged background, so they have to work with a study, which makes things harder. Yeah, and website is in Croatian and English, and I didn't notice a lot of diversity presented. So basically, this is it. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Lasse, and in my group we had a very good discussion about the film, and we thought that the film it was a movie, but it's really felt that these things still happen in schools, and we still have to make the fight every day to prevent it. We talk about diversity. And you could see that the staff were mainly from their own country, from Poland and what's great, yeah, thank you. The teachers was a mixed blend men and women. The student was also a mixture. We talk about the website, and the website was mostly in their own language, but even on English. And they are grouped to teach the students the language. But as we said, it's so nice meeting the group. But now I leave over to Gretchen. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think you can hear just from these short presentations that our point of view is quite different. In some tables, there were people from the same institution, and the projection, the image that was given was slightly different as to whether there was really diversity or not. But we see that generally speaking, there's a feeling that we are not so diverse, and that there are real funding issues. And this is going to come up later when we have the expert paper, and we're going to have a really wonderful video which also talks about this question and how, when you are from a more disadvantaged socioeconomic background, sometimes you don't always have the codes and you may feel excluded. So I think that we're going to pull all these different strands together, and what I take away from it is that you all sort of pinpointed different aspects of these questions that we really need to bear in mind. So we now have a wonderful walk to finish out this first block, and before we go into the coffee break. So I think I'm going to ask Constanze to take the lead.
Okay, so to make it more diverse, our diversity topic, I will ask you to come on stage again and build 2 rows of 15 people in 1 row, and starting like this. Wonderful. So this would be the first row going from here to there, and the second, and you are my second row. So I need a first row here. Be careful, be careful. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful row. Please. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. Perfect. Okay, so 2 rows. It should be 2 rows at the end. Slightly similar. Perfect. Perfect. So please make a step forward to each other. And now my row is turning, and turning the back to the row behind. Wonderful. And now Jesus and me, we will ask you questions. And please do as in the video you've seen, do 1 step forward or 1 step backward or stand still as the question goes. And please make very small steps, because our room is not very, very big and we have a lot of questions for you. So I think Jesus will start. Do you need a microphone?
Not for us, but for the
Yep.
group.
Yeah.
So my first question is, if your parents or guardians or tutors could pay for your instrument, or you had to use a free school instrument, please step forward. But then you don't step forward. You don't step forward. You don't have to pay for any instrument. Yeah. Okay. So I repeat the question. Is that clear? I repeat it. Okay. If your parents could pay for your instrument, or you had use of a free school instrument, please step forward.
If you had access to a professional quality instrument before age 18, step forward. And small steps, please.
Okay. If you experienced physical and or psychological emotional abuse by a music teacher, step backwards. Wow.
If you could afford to travel more than 4 hours for post-secondary school auditions, step forward. If you could afford to travel more than 4 hours for post-secondary school auditions, step forward. It's a complicated question.
Yeah. Don't worry, if you don't step forward once, it doesn't really matter. If you went to summer music programs, step forward. Good.
If the language spoken in your high school music rehearsals was your first language, step forward.
If you had a reliable, quiet place to practice, step forward.
If your high school offered music theory, step forward.
If you could afford to pay for meals on school, band, choirs, orchestra trips, step forward. 2 steps if the school pay for it.
If you had a reliably safe space to store your instrument when not playing it, step forward.
If your parents, guardians, attended your concerts, step forward.
If you had a piano or keyboard in your house growing up, step forward.
If your musical instructions conflicted with other extracurricular, like sports, whatever other activities, step forward.
No, step backward.
Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. Step backwards. Yes, thank you, Constanza.
If the music that is your passion is written down, step forward.
If the music that is your passion is communicated primarily through an oral tradition, step backwards. Yeah, I will repeat it. If the music that is your passion is communicated primarily through an oral tradition, step backwards, not written.
If you were not allowed, not encouraged to dance, step back.
If your religion, culture prevented you from singing, playing, step backwards.
If you could afford to buy new music, not copy it from library, step forward.
If you sang in an organized group before age 18, step forward.
If you had to audition by sending in a recording because you could not afford to travel to a live audition, take a step backwards.
If you had paid gigs, is that correct? Gigs? Gigs, that's right. It sounded very funny to me. Okay, I repeat. Yeah. It's been a long time since I did some gigs. Okay. If you... If you had paid gigs as a musician before age 18, step forward.
If you had a disability that made it difficult to carry your instrument around, step backwards.
If you could name 10 classical canonical pieces and their composers before you were 18, step forward.
If you took piano or organ or other keyboard lessons before age 18, step forward.
If you played in an extracurricular ensemble, like local symphony orchestra, youth orchestras, choirs, step forward.
If you were bullied by peers, family, anyone for playing music, step backwards.
If you had to work instead of practice, step backwards.
If your family or teachers encouraged you to listen to more than one genre of music, step forward.
If you did not own a tuxedo or a black concert dress and had to borrow it because you couldn't afford it, take a step backwards.
If you could read more than one clave before entering college, step forward.
Clef, G clef, F clef. Yeah.
Like the violin, the
piano,
or
F clef and G clef. If one of your family members played an instrument while you were growing up, step forward.
If you have a hearing impairment, take a step back.
If you had, this is mine, right? Yeah. If you had advanced instructions beyond 2 years of conversational language in high school, in foreign language before age 18, take a step forward. Well, it's quite tricky, difficult. Yeah, I think. Thank you, Gretchen.
Yeah, it's okay.
It has parentheses in between and it's tricky to read.
If you had any formal or informal instruction in ear training or oral skills before age 18, step forward.
If you...
People are afraid now.
We just have a few more, you know. Don't worry, don't worry. If you played in a school-sponsored ensemble, take a step forward.
If you had private music lessons before you were 18, take a step forward.
If you grew up in a house with more than 25 recordings, take a step forward. Records.
Do you remember CDs and things like that? If assigned an instrument because it corresponded to outdated ideas about your gender, step back.
If either of your parents was a professional musician, take 2 steps forward.
If your high school did not have a band or an orchestra, take 1 step back.
If you had your own stereo, step forward.
And the last question. If you attended live concerts of any kind of music performed by professional musicians before you were age 18, step forward. Okay. Thank you so much for doing this game with us and just have it in the body now, what we have experienced, what we've talked about the whole morning.